Greetings, and welcome to this conference hosted by MS Focus, the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation. Host Chris Payne, editor for MS Focus, and I'm joined by Lara Stepleman, who will be speaking to us about how to thrive while trying to survive. After a presentation from Lara, we'll open it up for your questions and comments. Now I'm delighted to introduce our speaker. Lara is the Chief of Psychology in the Department of Psychiatry and Health Behavior at the Medical College of Georgia at Augusta University. She is a health psychologist who has focused her clinical on assisting others to live well with chronic illness, particularly HIV and multiple interested in access to competent mental health care for individuals living with chronic illness who may have additional barriers to care and health disparities related to sexual orientation and gender identity, as well as race and ethnicity. She has collaborated with MS Focus since 2005. We're pleased to have her join us to present on this important topic. Lara, thank you so much for being here with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Chris. It is great to be here today. Welcome to everybody who is here to discuss this topic on Thrive While Trying to Survive, strengthening connection, purpose, and joy in difficult times. I know that you may have questions along the way. What we are going to do is ask people to hold questions until the end, but you're welcome to type them into the chat and they'll be read by Chris when we're done. I'll try to run in the 45-minute range so that we have a good amount of time for questions, but I'm also happy to stay after if we need additional time to do that. So I hope that the next hour or so gives you something that you can learn from, but also enjoy. I have personalized this to, you'll notice a lot of things in my own life related to trying to live well during difficult times. Including on the front of this painting, even though I'm not a painter, that I did as one of the many activities I've been doing during COVID, trying to find ways to experience joy and intrigue and interest during times where I can't do the things that I normally get to do, which is something that I know people with MS are often very familiar with when they're experiencing periods of relapse or having difficulties that make it hard to do the things that they used to do too. And now I just there. So this presentation is and is not a presentation on COVID-19. And when I say that, what I mean is clearly the idea of doing one on difficult times came about because, in fact, we're all together here in this difficult time now related to COVID. And at the same time, we are all inundated with COVID information unless we are being very good about controlling our social media to the point where that sometimes becomes an overfocus of things when in fact people have many challenges like MS or other health issues or relationship issues or financial issues. And so while I may talk about COVID as a shared experience that we are all having, that I hope you know that this information I'm presenting is really something that can be used and should be practiced whenever we're having difficult times in our lives. This also is and is not a presentation about MS. And what I mean by that is that, again, MS is in fact a chronic stressor for most people living with it unless they don't have a very severe case of it. And it is something that is always on our plate, but it's only one part of our identity, and that it's important for us to care for all different parts of ourselves. And again, the presentation and the suggestions that I make have been adapted the best that I can to thinking about all the different kinds of limitations or challenges that people with MS experience. But, you know, for those of you who have people out there in your family who don't have MS, who might be sitting around needing something to do for the next hour, this presentation will absolutely apply to caregivers, family, friends in your life as well. So this is my tribute to 2020. Challenges, I expected times like this, but I never thought they'd be so bad, so long, or so frequent. So welcome to August of 2020. We just got to hang on a few more months, folks. Hopefully 2021 will be a different kind of year for all of us. For those of you who have found ways to manage well, congratulations. And in addition to questions, I hope you also will share some of your experiences. One of the things that I often ask people are, what are things that you've learned to do differently this year in ways that are beneficial and that you may continue or that you share with people because they are really helpful. And so feel free during the question and answer session, not only to question or answer, but to share, okay? So the first part of this really just talks about stress. And while this isn't necessarily a stress management presentation, the reason that I talk about this is that regardless of what emotional experience that you have related to difficult times, oftentimes that's interrelated with stress. So if I'm feeling a lot of sadness about a difficult time, say a divorce, a lot of the sadness is coming from the stress of the divorce. It's an emotional response to the stress of that change. If I feel angry that I've had to change so much of my life over this year, that's coming about from the stress of having to change so much of my life over the last year. If I'm feeling anxious about it, if I'm feeling frustrated. So the reason why I bring this up is underlying the many emotional experiences that one can have to a difficult circumstance is this source of stress that sort of that sort of feeling inside, that tightening of the chest. And oftentimes for me, it's, tightening of the shoulders and putting my jaw, clenching my jaw. And those are sort of physical ways, but we have emotional expressions of stress. And so it's important for us to talk about our emotional responses to difficult challenges as ones that are motivated by the stress the difficult challenge creates. And so you can see there are lots of different kinds of stressors here. One could make the argument that COVID, for example, may have compiled all of these for you, right? Because you may have had conflict with others over it and differences of opinion on how best to manage your risk. A pandemic is in fact kind of a cataclysmic event, in my opinion. It also involves a lot of hassles that we have had to adjust to, etc. Similarly, we could make the same argument about MS kind of going around these sources of stress, that it can involve a chronic stress, but it also can involve frustration and life changes. And this is why it applies this sort of stress model to really any difficult life circumstance that we're facing that is causing emotional distress in our life. And there's many different types of stressors, right? And so again, using COVID as an example, people are out of work. If they've gotten sick, or if they are high risk, they may be experiencing physical stressors, the emotional response to stress, right? That's the depression, but also managing the emotional stressors of those around you. We may be in a family where some people are much more anxious about it than others, and having to do that management of taking care of others in our lives. And social stressors, in this case, it may be not being able to be as social as the stress, or trying to meet the needs of people who would like to interact with you in ways you might not be comfortable, given that you may perceive yourself as high risk. I know for myself, I don't have MS, but I do have several other autoimmune disorders that put me at high risk. I think I fall into about 4 risk categories when it comes to COVID. And so thinking about the ways in which my friends are comfortable socially engaging versus myself can often create stress, because of course I want to see them, but I also don't want to feel like the stress of having to do things I'm not comfortable with. And then balancing your needs and the needs of others. So again, whether we're talking about MS or COVID or something or another life stressor, often when other people are involved, we are trying to both balance our own responses and taking care of ourselves, as well as the other people who are involved in that particular life circumstance, and trying to make sure that our needs are getting met and we're meeting the needs of others. And certainly I have to actively practice, I don't know about you, but I have to actively practice the balancing of my own needs because as a psychologist, I think, and as a generally altruistic person, I tend to go to tending to the needs of others first, which means I have to, and this is why you'll see when I've put sort of pictures of the things I've been doing, trying to balance that, I have to actively practice that balance of needs. And that's really in some ways what this presentation is about, is making your own plan for sort of living your best life in this moment and in difficult moments to come for you. And so stressors are also, in addition to categories, divided into acute and chronic stressors. So an acute stressor may be something rapid onset, short duration. For most of us, that's not what we're experiencing. Certainly when we're talking about MS or COVID, hopefully COVID will go away soon, but right now it is a chronic stressor, one that we have to deal with regularly. An acute stressor would be kind of how you deal with a very busy week at work where you have multiple things coming, or the holidays in December, right? So that's an acute stressor. You may be like, how am I going to get everybody's gifts? And I don't feel well, and I've got to get this tree up, or, cook these things, So those would be acute stressors that we know are going to be over in a couple of weeks. So the chronic ones are the ones that kind of continue. And both of those have wear and tear on us emotionally and physically. So stress can undermine our health in two ways. And so the first one is indirectly in terms of in feeling stress and the emotional responses to it. So if it's producing a lot of anxiety or depression in me, that may mean that I might use more alcohol. So they found alcohol consumption is on the rise during COVID, right? They reported one of the highest numbers of like people reporting problems with sleep ever because not taking care of themselves. Physical well-being, so people may not exercise as much. You've all already heard about kind of like the equivalent of the freshman 15, which is the weight gain that you gain when you start college, dealing with all of the new things. I don't know if we have it's the COVID 10, I don't know what we're calling it here, but definitely you see a lot of memes and comments online about people taking care, having trouble managing their weight and their health and their sleep because their health behaviors aren't as good when they're feeling stressed. And then the direct effects of stress are really that stress not only affects us emotionally, which affects our behaviors, but also affects us directly in terms of our body. That stress increases inflammation in our body and can lead to physical symptoms like headaches, or can worsen our health symptoms. There's been not a relationship necessarily between stress and onset of a new diagnosis of MS, but in terms of how MS symptoms are managed or not managed can be, and how you experience them physically can be related to significant episodes of stress. And so it's important that we really sort of think about this model when we're trying to live the very best we can. And so just briefly, these are some of the adverse physical impacts of stress. So you can see it affects our immune system, which, as we know, COVID does also, which is why it's so important to take care of the stress piece of this, right? Because all of these things are related to inflammation and things that can make which it also says, which can increase our physical health problems in multiple ways, because inflammation is associated with depression, it's associated with MS, it's associated with COVID. So we have lots of things happening here, and this is why they hypothesize that people who have certain health problems may in fact do worse because they already have increased difficulty related to this. And so things to think about in yourself on how am I adapting to whatever the current life stressors are in your life. You may be someone who's on here who rates COVID very low on how much it's been considered a difficult life challenge. You may rate it very high, similarly with how much MS is causing you stress right now. For some of you, it may be things that have nothing to do with either of those. But one of the ways you know that there's like a stress warning signal, that the light's going on, that you need to do something different, is kind of looking at these different responses, some of which we've discussed related to the emotional symptoms. I've seen a lot of people be a lot more agitated, have a lot less room for patience. Their patience runs out much quicker, or they feel overwhelmed. Loneliness and isolation, of course, can come both with COVID and MS and other life stressors. So there's these emotional symptoms, but also cognitive symptoms, which I recognize when some of them overlap with MS. So it wouldn't surprise me if some of you who are experiencing actually a host of these symptoms might have even gone to your physician concerned that you're having a relapse of MS when you see elevation in multiple symptoms and not knowing how to discern what of this is related to sort of stress, depression, and what might be an actual MS symptom. I'm stressed when I have any new physical symptom that's on the list of COVID symptoms, which is, there's so many of them, so I had an upset stomach all day yesterday. I'm like, that's one of the COVID symptoms. Now I have to watch again and get tested again. But, it's interesting because when you have when you are trying to attend to all the things in your life, even having to add that worry, like my stomach's upset today, I wonder what that means. I wonder if I should work in trying to get tested. It adds all of this stress to us. And so what I want to do is really talk more about, we get it. There's a lot of stress out there related to all of these things. But what do we do so that we can get out of hopefully 2020 feeling like it was really hard, but also there were good things. There were things that I felt good about in my life. Like, the picture on I was telling Casey at the beginning, the picture on the cover that I painted was a birthday gift I made for a friend that I probably would have never had time to make, both because I'm not a painter and because I don't usually have extra time on my hands, but getting to give that to someone and watch the joy that they experienced getting that, like, that is something that I know will have made my 2020 for me, like that I did that for somebody, and also got to do something new that I was proud of. And so you'll notice many of the pictures are of me because I'm trying to demonstrate that I actually do try to practice what I preach here. And so when we talk about adjustment to change, this is about our coping skills that we use, and this is very important, to live our best lives within our current circumstances. And what our best life is may be different at different times. I have had times where my autoimmune system has been very out of whack to the point where, I had difficulty walking and getting out of bed. I have reactive arthritis, which at times means when I'm having a bout of it, I can't get up and down stairs, like I can't lift my arms, like pretty major things. And yet the question always is how we live our best life in that. Like, I want that to go away. I want that to get better. But knowing that it might take some time, I still have this life to live. And so how do I live it the best way I can within the circumstances? And so that's really what I want to talk to us about together today, is this idea that we can acknowledge that this is a hard year, that we have many things that are difficult to cope with, but there are good things that we can make of this if we get the mindset that we are going to do that while acknowledging the challenges of this time period for us. So it's not denying them, it's acknowledging them and saying we're going to try to live our best life in the middle of it, which doesn't mean we can do that every day effectively. So some coping methods work better than others. So the alcohol that we talked about too much overeating, things like that. Those aren't good coping methods. Uh, and being skilled at several of them is better than just relying on one or two. This is a therapy example that I use all the time that I call the dinner plate of coping methods. That, you know, French fries are delicious, but if all you had were French fries to eat, you would not be well long term. Although, you know, there was that movie where that guy ate McDonald's for a long time and he seemed to survive, but not very well. Versus well-rounded, right? So when you have multiple coping skills and kinds of coping skills, right? So here we have vegetables and starches and fruits. So it's the same thing. Do we have behavioral coping skills? Do we have emotional coping skills? Do we have support coping skills? Do we have physical coping skills? So when we have coping skills from a variety of different places, we have a better chance of being able to sort of live our best sort of life in the moment than if we just kind of go to one. And so, you know, think about as we're going through this. And so in some ways, this is a list, but it's really meant just as a way for us to talk about different things that you might be able to do. And I will be happy, and so we probably talk about 10 or so of them in here, but I would be happy if each of you out there committed to doing just one more effectively, making a commitment today by the end of this presentation to saying, you know, that's one I know I could be doing better, and I'm not, and I'm going to commit to that one change. As a psychologist, I believe behavior change comes over time, which means we start one thing, and when we feel good that we're doing it, it may give us motivation to start more things. If we commit to 5 at once, we're more likely not to follow through because we're likely to be overwhelmed. So if you commit to just one of these things today, I will feel fantastic about it. So practicing gratitude. So there's good research on gratitude, and regular practice can, and these are all research-based, improve sleep, decrease depression, boost mood, improve social relationships, and more. And what gratitude does is help us reset our mind on a bad day of what's going right rather than what's going wrong in our life. You know, and so even if each of you right now in your head try to list 3 things today you're grateful for. So you see here that I am grateful for my partner, which is the first picture. I am grateful for my silly dog Atticus, who is a relatively new dog in my life and brings me lots of joy. And you'll see him later sleeping in a hammock with me. And I am grateful for the garden that I grow. I grew an extra beautiful garden this year with lots of flowers because I find looking at things that are beautiful and smell good, like, get me back focused in the moment of things that are worth being here for. And I really do sort of practice this, especially when I'm having a hard day and really kind of sunk into like all the things that are going wrong. I do try to stop and say, you know, it could be worse. Let me think about some things that I'm really happy are in my life, people that I'm happy are in my life, things that are, you know, and just that like today I'm not sick or today I feel okay. And so trying to do that can be very helpful. I absolutely love this calendar. I found it while preparing this presentation. So for those of you who've never gone to the website actionforhappiness.org, I absolutely love this. So helping other people, and not again without having good boundaries, but doing simple things for other people actually make us feel better. It gives us positive feelings. It can help us develop more meaning in our lives because we're doing things for others. And they have a month by month action calendar, which I think is fabulous, of really simple things you could do for other people to make a difference. And you'll notice on here that even if you were in a significant MS relapse or staying home because you're at high risk for COVID, that the vast majority of these things you could do, not all of them, but many, many of them. You know, just sending a positive message to someone you can't be with. So I have a friend who just had her appendix out unexpectedly this week, and I've been trying to send nice messages and silly things to her every day. So if you haven't been there, I would bookmark this page because I think, in terms of thinking about, how can I do something that will make me feel like I've done something good today for someone else? It doesn't have to be donating money if you don't have money. It doesn't have to be, doing something very physical if your physical activity level isn't good. There are many things you can do. So staying connected is really important. So I know already for many people with MS, isolation can be a problem. And COVID, so either COVID didn't make it any harder because you were already really good at isolating, or it made it worse because now you have multiple ways in which you are now facing challenges with social interaction. And the truth of the matter is that although we all describe ourselves as somewhere on the introverted to extroverted spectrum, and some people get more energy from being with other people, that even within whatever your level of sociability, how social you are, how much you enjoy social connection, everybody needs some. So people with good relationships, there's research they may live longer, be happier, and even physically healthier. And so there's good reason. And some of you may be social butterflies with hundreds of people in your life. Some of you may just have one or two important people in your lives, but whoever those people are, finding ways to stay connected and being able to share both the good and the challenges you're having is very important. And so, I've tried to, again, adjust this to sort of being safer during COVID, activities to stay connected. And that includes phone calls and like the Zoom conference that we're on today using Skype or Google Hangouts. Social media, I think, can be effective, I would say, with limitations, because there are some days, I don't know about you, but there's some days where I look at Facebook and I have to log off because the first 10 messages are just kind of negative news things. And they're not that they're not real. They're not that they're not real things I have to face. It's just not something that's going to help me stay connected and make me feel energized to sort of do things well for myself. And so if that's what it looks like, which is why if you were to look on my Facebook, you would see far more pictures of my dog Atticus and flowers and me doing silly things than you would. And I do put political things on there or things going on in our media. But I would say I do it at the rate that I'm comfortable with, which is more like 80% trying to live life well, 20% facing the challenges of the day. And if your Facebook friends don't look like that, you can actually block them for 30 days at a time. So if you have some people that are really just putting in a lot of stuff that's negative, you don't have to unfriend them. You can just quiet them for 30 days and then check back, and maybe they'll be in a different space, or reach out to them and try to do something nice for them. Online games is a great way to interact with people, and you can do that on your phone, on your computer. I've encouraged people who are able to actually do visitation to do that, but outside, do masks and social distance. For those of you, who struggle with heat, which when my autoimmune disease was in full, before it went into its own remission, I would have the same kind of heat-related weakness. And so thinking about doing that in the morning or evening, so you will find me on my hammock outside in the evenings under the fan, and that's kind of the time where I do my outside. And it's actually about 6 feet away from my sofa, which means I can have a friend over and I can be in my hammock and they can be outside. So thinking about outdoor activities, my neighborhood has been doing fun things like drive-by parades, so that, to wish people happy birthday, or for babies, or for anything. I turned 50 this year. I did not have a drive-by parade, but it would have been great if I had. But I found many sort of small ways to sort of make that valuable. I think, one of the important things with staying connected is that many of us have graduations and birthdays and births and marriages going on in the middle of all of this. And so finding meaningful ways to connect to the people we care about and love during those times, to have them celebrate with us, is so important. And I personally keep a small social pod of people, and we make agreements about risks that we are willing to take and not take. And when people have taken a risk that falls outside our comfort zone, the rule kind of is go get yourself COVID tested and let me know how that is, and we'll hang out afterwards. So I have a friend who just got back from some travel, and they'll be getting COVID tested today before I can hang out with them this weekend. So there are ways to sort of still socially interact, but I really try to be very thoughtful about how I do that to try to keep everybody safe. Making time to relax. I promised you a picture of me on my hammock, which I just put up this weekend. And it's really important. So if you're with me on the idea that difficult circumstances produce stress of varying magnitudes that can impact us physically and emotionally and behaviorally, then what we have to do on some level is the opposite of that, right? So relaxation undoes the tension we experience related to stress. It helps reduce the kind of worry thinking that we often have in relation to difficult circumstances. It gives our body a chance to sort of refresh itself from all of the tension that we experience during difficult times. So whether you do something like yoga or adaptive yoga, there's amazing videos online for this. For those of you who like to do who need to do adaptive or regular yoga, I do a 30-minute yoga video a few times a week that I really like. Deep breathing exercises. So being stressed, especially an acute stressor, and there's a lot of those too, right? Because oftentimes, like, I'll find out something isn't open because of COVID that I really need to get to, and now it's going to be much more stressful. So rather than letting that spin out of control, that's a good time just to take some deep breaths and remind yourself that it's going to be okay. Doing guided imagery. I think this is really a nice idea right now, because since for those of you who do like to travel, and I'm one of those people and had to give up many trips, several trips this year, taking yourself, using all of the senses that you have to a place that you really love, that relaxes you. For me, that's going to Mexico and going to the beach and just closing my eyes and imagining what it smells like, what it tastes like, what it looks like, you know, what the sand feels like under my feet walking through it, and sort of breathing with that. That can be very helpful. And also just bringing back pleasant memories. That also sort of counts as a pleasurable experience in doing that, as do all of these. Meditation is very good. And then hobbies, and not only hobbies, but like trying new hobbies, because not only might they relax you, but also one of the things that can help us feel good during difficult times is developing a sense of mastery over something we didn't know before. So I know some people who are doing like online language learning, for example, and they'll do that for, 20 minutes a day as something just new to kind of keep their mind off of things, to learn something new. And the more we learn something, the better we often feel about ourselves, because we develop this thing called mastery, which can increase our self-esteem. And so if you haven't picked up something new to do this year, that's another thing I would suggest, because just getting to learn something new or practice something new or try a new art or craft or activity you've been wanting to try can really improve ourselves as well. Which falls in line here with having a little fun and laughing. I have a friend who is a dog groomer, and I will occasionally go out when I need a break from my very helping people of life to go helping dogs and enjoying them. And so this is me laughing with some puppies, because puppies are always the best dogs to hang out with when grooming. So fun activities are important to do. They can be done with other people. They don't have to be done with other people. Again, a full plate really would suggest that you have some of each on there. And you'll see the ones that I put on here. So fun activities, for those of you who think of fun activities sometimes like I do as a vacation, or a weekend away, or, spending a whole day doing things where we might not have the energy to do that right now. Fun activities can take as little as a few seconds to an extended period of time. And again, some of each are good. And right now I have to focus more on ones that take a few minutes or a couple of hours, because I don't have the ability to, I can't go out and do a lot of the things that would take a more substantial amount of time. So quick examples of these things are, listening to a favorite song you haven't heard in a while, sitting in the sun with sunblock or for a limited period of time. Notice I put all these cautionary tales behind all of my things, but reading a magazine article, reading it to someone else, on, doing FaceTime and reading something really interesting to discuss to somebody, writing an email to an old friend, and catching up with them. It's a great time to catch up with people that we kind of tell ourselves, I should be in better contact with this person and I miss this person. It's a great time to do that. And sort of similar to the guided imagery, daydreaming about a wonderful memory and even sharing it. Putting on favorite pieces of clothing or jewelry. So even though I don't go out very much anymore, like I will have dinner with my partner at home, who is a great cook, on Saturday nights. And I always end up like dressed, like I could come in pajamas and he wouldn't care less. But like for me, who like enjoys wearing nice clothes and putting on makeup and things like that, like I make it a little, like he might come in pajamas. I don't require this of him. If it's not fun for him, he doesn't need to do it. But for me, it's fun. And so I do that. And in the couple times where I've had sort of safe social things over, I noticed that all of the women in particular, like we're all wearing dresses, even though like it's a very casual get together. And we're like, well, I never have a chance to wear this. And I have this great summer sundress. So like, yes, if you have to go to your doctor, wear your favorite dress. Don't worry about whether you need to wear a dress to your doctor or not. Like if you're going out, like you should enjoy every bit of it that you can, even if it's just to the doctor's office. So exercise, so if you are someone, I don't know if my tongue out during my social distance yoga means I like yoga, or I think I'm just being silly there because I do like my yoga. But finding small things that you can do, again, many of these activities that I'm giving you, they can take as little time as you want, a few minutes of stretching in the morning, to as long as you want. And I actually vary my exercise pretty significantly, anywhere from 15 minutes to like an hour a day, depending on what I'm doing, on the days that I do it, which isn't every day. But remembering that, again, that stress causes wear and tear on the body. So doing things like exercise, again, within your physical limits, helps to motivate repair on your body and helps to undo the damage that stress does when we're in difficult times. And I have to say, like, and I just started doing yoga again after a few years in January. It was the last time I got to go on a cruise was in January. And so I started doing yoga again. And I don't always love doing it, but I can tell you, if I've had a really bad day, I will make myself go up to my little area where I do it, and I will do it, and I will feel better. And so I have to sometimes kind of remind myself, we all fall somewhere on the continuum of hate exercise to love exercise. I probably fall pretty squarely in the middle, but if I'm having a lot of stress, I tend not to want to do it. And that's actually when I make myself do it, is because I almost always feel better afterwards. And what I do is kind of make a deal with myself, like, do it for 10 minutes. And if you aren't feeling better, then stop. I almost always go past 10 minutes because it does make me feel better. So sleep is really important, as I mentioned at the beginning, with COVID in particular. A much larger number of people are reporting dysregulation with sleep. And with MS, sleep can be a problem as well, related to MS-related pain that people may be feeling, or if they are feeling depressed. So there's lots of things that interfere with our sleep that may overlap or be attributable to MS, as well as the other stressors that we're having. And so this is just some guidance for you on trying to do better around sleep. I've been going to bed earlier to try to get a little bit more, try to get an extra hour of sleep lately. And by the way, that's my partner again and my dog practicing good sleep hygiene together. And he doesn't know I've used that picture. Hopefully he's not secretly on here, because I'll be chastised later for putting sleeping pictures of him on here, but I couldn't help myself because they're so cute, aren't they? But so, and I don't know about you, but finding a comfortable temperature right now has been hard for me. One, because I'm 50, but the other because it's just hot out right now. And so trying to keep my room cool enough for me. I've had to get an extra fan in the bedroom, things like that. Trying to wind down beforehand. You can see, like, exercise regularly, but not right before bed, because that can rev you up too much. But also, for those of you who don't know, and I can't ask because we're not interacting yet, but so reserving the bed for the 3 S's is really important. So that's basically sleeping, sex, and sickness. If you aren't doing one of those, you probably should be doing the activity you're doing somewhere else. So dinner, although supper would be an S, it's not one of the S's for sleeping. So if you're eating your dinner in bed, unless you're sick, you probably can't eat while you're sleeping, and I don't know, eating with sex, I don't know. So basically, if you're eating in bed, playing games in bed, watching a lot of TV in bed, and I understand that some people may need to do that, you might want to find another, and that's really why one of the reasons I put the hammock outside is because I found myself coming home from work, and with fewer people to interact with, it was just kind of easier to get in my bed and watch TV in there. And that wasn't really good for my mood or anything. And so putting the hammock outside allows me to, like, kind of be like in a bed, but I get fresh air and I find it more relaxing, and it's not going to interfere with my sleep. And that's really, so sort of thinking about your own sleep behaviors. If in my rule with sleep hygiene, when I teach it to people, is if you sleep great, then don't worry about any of these things. But if you are having sleep problems, then think about, again, a few of these you probably could do better in order to try to promote better sleep. Again, we are thinking in terms of handling difficult things in our lives in terms of restoration. So relaxation contributes to restoration. Sleep contributes to restoration. Doing pleasurable things that bring on good emotions contribute to restoration of our body during difficult times, and just in general. And so working on your thinking will be sort of that last area that I'm focused on. And it's important, so a lot of those were activities, but really the way that you're thinking about things. So I don't know which one that you fall into in terms of, are you an optimist? You know, if you're like me, like, well, so in uncertain times, I usually expect the best. Nope, that's not me. Yeah, I'm probably, so I probably fall into 3 oftentimes, which is, again, if you fall into 3, which is if something can go wrong for me, it will. Now, not every day do I feel like that, but I certainly have a couple of days a week where I feel like that, where it just doesn't stop. This is why you cannot take caring for yourself as something that will just happen. This is why you have to plan the ways in which you are going to cope and work those in. Because if I operated like that all of the time on full speed, I would be very unhealthy. And so when I'm in those mindsets, like trying to get out of those mindsets by thinking about how I'm thinking, but if I can't do that, then going and doing something that will distract me and get me out of that mindset. So many of us have errors in thinking. So these are not really MS or COVID related. These are just sort of it shows you that we all do this, kind of thinking the worst, my friend hasn't called me in a week. She must not want me around anymore. Thinking that everything is going wrong when only one thing is going wrong. Like, I forgot to take my medicines today. See, I can't take care of myself at all. It doesn't matter that you got dressed and took a shower and made phone calls and did everything else, but you just only focused on the medicine you forgot to take. Arguing away the positive, like, oh, he sent me flowers because he feels sorry for me, not because I'm a worthwhile person worthy of sending flowers to. Um, or that I've also done nice things for this person or whatever, but just like they feel bad for me because I have MS or because I'm sick or having a hard time. And blaming yourself for other people's behaviors. My child failed their exam. I should have helped him more. I'm a bad parent. Uh, and these aren't all of them. In psychology, we've got thinking errors for days. But these are some that I find when I work, especially with people with MS, that they often have. And so you can pick the one that you think you might be most guilty of, so to speak. Uh, I probably don't think the worst, but I probably am someone that would argue away the positive sometimes. And one of the best things that I've found for this is whatever your thought is to ask yourself two questions. If you can identify a thought that's really bothering you, the first is to say, is it accurate? Because a lot of times, so a lot of these are not accurate. There's thinking errors in them. And so if it's not accurate, working on fixing the thought to something more realistic that you also believe, like, instead of I forgot to take my medicine today, see, I can't take care of myself at all, it would be I forgot to take my medicine today and I want to work on that because that's important to my health. But there are a lot of other good things I did do today for my health. So that would be an accurate statement. The fact part is I forgot to take my medicine and I did a number of good things for my health. So that would make it more accurate. But the other question, even when it is accurate, because you don't want to get trapped, because you know what, some things you have a thought about, like, this is horrible. And from an accuracy perspective, maybe that thing is horrible. The question then becomes, is it helpful? Because if it's not a helpful thought, even if it's an accurate thought, if it's not helpful, then finding another way around it, that a way that you can think about it, that you can hold better, will help increase your mood and improve the way that you feel and increase motivation. Because really, when you're thinking lots of negative thoughts about yourself, others, or your situation, right? So is it helpful? COVID is a significant risk in Georgia. I live in Georgia. It got rated the state like you're most likely to get COVID in. I know that my friends from the MS Foundation have been living in Florida and dealing with that as well, of being in one of them. So yes, absolutely. Is it accurate? Yes. How helpful is it for me going around saying, Georgia's the place I'm most likely to get infected all day long? Like, it's not really helpful, even though it's accurate, right? So to make it helpful is, I'm gonna, that it is bad in Georgia right now. That doesn't mean that I will get it. If I get it, it doesn't mean that I will get very sick. And I can take risk prevention that really hopefully will reduce the likelihood of any of those things happening. And that's a much more helpful thought than just like, Georgia is a walking cesspool of COVID and I'm just going to get it, So that's not helpful, even though that might feel accurate sometimes. Practicing acceptance. And some people feel like acceptance is just surrender to bad things, but it's not. Nor is it feeling good about your situation. And in fact, passive acceptance, which is almost like denial, is generally not associated with good physical and emotional outcomes. And I've actually found that people who have passively accepted COVID, I can see that in their mood of like, I can't do anything. I just have to accept that it is how it is and just like go live my life. Like, and that's usually not a very healthy place to be. And so the idea of acceptance is, instead of fighting or avoiding, which is kind of passive acceptance, pain and distress, making room for it, making room for feeling upset or sad or in pain, and allowing those things to be there without struggling against them. And what I mean by that is one of the things we know for like anxiety is that sometimes making room for feeling anxious and saying it's okay if I feel that way right now. I'm just going to take some deep breaths and kind of almost like a labor pain, like let it pass, but accept that it's there, will be better for us because when you actually struggle against anxiety, you feel more anxiety. Uh, so when people, we call that anticipatory anxiety, like I know I'm going to do this and this makes me feel anxious. So I'm feeling anxious even about the thought of doing it, let alone actually doing it. And so it accumulates. So rather than that, being able to say, you know, I know giving talks sometimes makes me anxious. I'm going to accept that I might feel that way, you know, and allow that anxiety to be there and still just do the best that I can in giving this presentation, even if it puts little flutteries in my stomach sometimes when I'm doing public speaking. Practicing mindfulness, which is kind of acceptance adjacent, so it encompasses parts of acceptance, is sort of mindfulness is this idea of recognizing there are things around us that are hard, not pushing them away, but just noticing them, not necessarily sucking them in, but just kind of like being like, yes, I see this is happening around me and making room for that experience. And being curious about like why, you know, sort of what's going on for me. But almost feel like you're a witness to it rather than the center of it. You know, I do this with pain sometimes where I try to just sort of notice that like I'm having more pain, but trying not to become kind of one with the pain where I am fused with it and can't separate myself from it. Because then what that does is make me more upset and makes my pain. So rather than doing that, I say, I just notice like, oh, my pain level's higher today. I try not to have a lot of emotional reaction to that. My pain level is higher today. Let me think about the things I can do, you know, be curious about what might be contributing to it, but not becoming so overwhelmed by it that it becomes everything about me. That doesn't mean some days that doesn't happen. It means that this is the stance I try to do every day. And some days I do better than others. And you will always hear me say on all of these things that this is about trying and doing the best we can. And some days we're going to nail it. And some days we're not. And being accepting of that too. It's also important, I've been talking about lots of good things for you to do, but also minimizing your use of unhealthy coping skills, of blaming yourself, of having high persistent negative emotions, trying to do everything perfectly. I've watched people with COVID try to do that, you know, and we know that even people who've done everything perfectly to reduce risk sometimes end up infected, and they've been stressed the whole time trying to do it perfectly. And so all of these things, being pessimistic, feeling helpless, like you can't do anything, avoiding dealing with things. So again, if you know that you are guilty of a few of those or use some of those maybe more than is helpful for you, trying to think about how to reduce your use of some of those while increasing your use of some of the others that I discussed. If it gets to be too much, by the way, so the others are things you can do at home, but the great thing is now you can often do therapy at home. And so if you're using these strategies and faithfully applying them, but you are noticing that you are still just very emotionally unregulated and upset and panicked, having like panic attacks or depressive episodes where you can't get out of bed, not just for one day, but for really for multiple days where it's becoming progressive, you really should be assessed so that you can get therapy. I want everyone to come out of this year in a great space, as great as they possibly can be. And if it's getting to be too much, if you're fighting with your partner too much because of all the stress that it's causing, this is a great time also to get treatment if you need treatment for that. And there is no shame in acknowledging that your stress cup is overflowing this year and that you need some help And really what they'll help you do is apply a lot of the things I've talked about. So in many ways, therapy becomes like a coach around all of those things and helping you remove the barriers to applying the good stuff, and also being helpful in helping you figure out why it's hard to cut out the things that aren't so adaptive that you're doing. And since so much of it is being done via telemedicine, we do teletherapy here. I do this sometimes all day long with patients. Support groups, again, most of them are online right now. This is great for this time period, just like you all coming here today, to meet other people, to get support and information. Socialization is so key right now. And to know that you're not alone in your experience of all of the things you may be experiencing right now in terms of challenges in your life. And then finally, an important note is that even when you do all the right things to take care of yourself, some days, weeks, or months still are going to be difficult. So being willing to experience the pain that comes with those things in the context of trying to create a full life will result often in greater life satisfaction than trying to fight or avoid the things. And really what this comes down to is trying to do really good things for yourself while carrying the pain and not pushing it away often makes people happier than saying, I'm not going to do anything because I'm experiencing pain. I would rather enjoy and laugh and have pain than just have pain. And that's really what this is about, is you're still going to have days that are going to be hard even when you do everything right. So practice kindness to yourself during times of stress. So, and my true belief here is, that the grand essentials of happiness are something to do and someone to love and something to hope for. And I think there's good reason to believe that even in the difficult times we're experiencing, that all of those can be true for us. So that's the end of my talk, and I am happy to take questions. And I'm happy to stick around for, I know that took just a little bit longer than I thought it would, so happy to stick around for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, however long it takes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So for those of our participants who would like to ask questions, there are a couple of ways that you can do so. First of all, you can use the chat feature. If you touch your screen or click your screen, you will see a chat bubble icon with the word chat underneath, and you can type in the questions that you have. Or if you'd like to ask your question or share a comment live, then you can use the raise hand feature. Where you find the raise hand feature depends on which version of the app that you're using. If you're on a computer, you're going to find that under the participants menu way down at the bottom. If you are on a tablet or a mobile device, you're going to find it on the more menu, which shows a ... If you click raise hand, I'll bring you on the line and you'll see an option for unmuting yourself appear on your screen. Please allow me to unmute you. All right, so one of the questions we have is, how do we give ourselves permission to self-care when we're actively caring for others?
So that's a great question. Actually, when I made this talk, I took it from parts of it from other talks I've given. And actually one of them was from a caregiver talk that I give. It's one of the places I took this from. So that is a long answer. So I'll try to give you sort of the short, which is that we know that caregivers and people who are taking care of others are at increased risk for depression, about double what the general population is. They're also at increased risk for a number of health problems related to not taking care of themselves, which can put them actually in a pretty poor position to care for their loved ones very well. And so reminding yourself, first of all, that caring for others does mean caring for yourself, and giving yourself permission to say, in order to do this better, and because you are worthy. And this is where you really, and if you're having trouble with it, I work with caregivers. I have patients who are caregivers of people with MS right now. And we talk about creating time via the resources and talking to the different MS societies and foundation that provide resources for sometimes for temporary caregiving or to help you get ideas. Going to support groups is a great way to find out how other people do it and also to hear how someone else got over their own guilt for taking time for themselves. But it is really important that we call on both paid and informal caregivers in our life to help us share the burden of that. We can't take on the burden, and I know some people may feel like you are the only person. If we were in therapy, I would help you find other people and show you there are other people in your life that could share that burden with you. But also remembering that this talk focused on things that went from a few minutes to a few hours. And so remembering that taking time outs of deep breathing and imagery and listening to music, even for 10 minutes sometimes, can kind of get you back refocused on the task at hand. And knowing that you will do it better and that you will care for yourself better are ways to do that. And so what I would say is you need to develop your own sort of affirmation script about why this is important to do. And that would help you when you're feeling stuck. So when you're in a good mental place to develop a script so that you can read that to yourself on why you deserve this and find ways to do that.
Now, on the flip side of that, some of our listeners have more severe symptoms, and in order to practice self-care, they have to involve others. How do you suggest that they process that?
Internally or with the people they need help for? You mean sort of how do they allow themselves to let others help them? Is that kind of where you're at?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, so the mindsets aren't that dissimilar when flipping it to the other side. Is really again kind of, and you won't be able to do this in like 5 minutes if I say, you know, think of all the reasons that you should involve other people in your wellness and allow them to participate in helping. So first of all, so this is something you would develop over time and continue to kind of keep a list of. But the research does show that caregivers report getting a tremendous amount, even though it is stressful at times, out of being altruistic to the people they love. And so it is a gift to both people. It often increases the closeness of the relationship at times when you do things together. So it gives you time you might not have had with your adult child who comes by and maybe they're doing something with you and you know they're busy and they have a busy, but it builds the relationship. And so remembering that there are relational benefits out of it. To not assume, the assumption in that question is that you are not giving back to that person in some way, right? And in fact, each of us, through our sense of humor or what we think about or our ways of expressing emotion to people and love, give things back too. And so we should not assume that's a unidirectional relationship. We really need to assume that even when someone is the primary helper, that it's bidirectional and that there are things that we're able to give and help within that relationship, and to spend some time thinking about that. As I said, those aren't things you can develop just from me saying that, but I promise you that if you do that, you will have the opportunity to really think about, and I would ask people, you know, even if you can't ask your own caregiver, ask other caregivers what they get out of doing it. You will be surprised at the list of things that people will say that they get out of doing this work that may make you not feel, you know, the sort of that you're being a burden, which is, I know how most people will describe that.
Thank you for that. And Erica asks, how do you find a therapist who works online and takes Medicare?
So that may be an insurance question that I can't answer, but what I can tell you is that I see people through telemedicine and they are Medicare patients. So I know in the state of Georgia at Augusta University Health that is possible. Now the crossing state lines thing is difficult, so you need to find somebody. And so that may be, and I'd have to hear more about the specific situation, but that may have to do with sort of how they practice. And so here we are set up to do telemedicine and be able to bill. It's billed at a different rate. So some places don't want to do it because they lose about 65% of what they could bill if you were there in person. And so some of it may be that they're not willing to do that because we get a fee just for you coming and sitting in our office. And if you saw my office and what you sat in, you'd be like, I shouldn't have to pay that for that. But that's just the way Medicare works. That Medicare gives you both a professional fee and a facility fee. And so we lose the facility fee when we do it in this format. And so as soon as the COVID numbers go down, they tell us, get everyone back in your office. And then once they go back up, they're like, send everybody home. And so and some places may have just said they can't afford to accept. I mean, we know that healthcare is a business like everybody else. And so some may have decided they can't accept that. But I don't know, since it's a Medicare thing, which is federal, I don't think there's, and in fact, they've expanded what they've provided in terms of reimbursement under Medicare during COVID. And so in terms of permissiveness of what we're allowed to do and systems we're allowed to use to make sure treatment is accessible. So some of that may just be access to provider issues in general too, that you're experiencing and not just Medicare specific, but definitely, talk with someone at the foundation or in your state, one of the sort of points of access to mental health care services to find out how that might be helpful and how you might be able to get to people.
All right. And that's all the questions that we have in the queue. So I want to say thank you very much to Dr. Lara Stepleman. We appreciate you being here and taking the time to share this information with us and being so open with your own life and your own experiences. It made it very personal.
Thank you. It was great having an opportunity to talk with you all.
And I want to thank all of our listeners for your attention and your participation. We hope that you'll join us again. Our next presentation will be on this coming Monday at 1 p.m. and that will be on free services for people with multiple sclerosis. I will be there and joined by Derek Lee, our Associate Director of Quality of Life Programs and Services. We hope to see you all there. If you missed any part of this presentation, it will be available on the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation YouTube channel and on MS Focus Radio in the coming weeks. So please follow the foundation on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter for times and access information. We appreciate you being here with us and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again to Dr. Stepleman, and we hope we'll see you all again soon.